Why does Russia need Russian men when there are Putin and migrants? The targeted genocide of the male population in the Russian Federation is gaining momentum. It's as if the authorities are fulfilling some kind of social order. Here he sits, as I dreamed in a dream, with the government together on an imaginary site for sorting people. So here we leave the women. There are already so few children born, they are needed as future workers. But the men are, let's put them in the basket. They interfere. But not all of them. In Soviet times, there was a good comedy Take Care of Men in 1982. Dismemberment drama and patriotic sagas are now popular. And then the authors asked not only the female sex, but also the whole cheerful people they say take care of men. In many ways, the great Russian Empire was based on them. Peasants, workers, soldiers. They raised the flag of the state and carried it. No matter how much they scolded the bear-marked Mikhail Gorbachev for living so long because the devils in hell are afraid that he will ruin hell like the Usur, this native of Stavropol made attempts to save Russian men. Under his leadership, the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Afghanistan began, where losses were estimated at tens of thousands of wounded, crippled soldiers and almost 500,000 people with various diseases. About 15,000 cargo 200. But this is official data. Now, do we also know the real losses in the area of their own? Trying to sober up the nation and the gene pool under pressure perhaps from his wife Raisa Maximovna, whose brother got drunk and tortured the whole family, Gorbachev still pushed through the dry law. And Syai responded with record childbearing. Thirdly, Gorbachev himself was an example of a bright leader. Intelligent, fit, relatively athletic, without a cigarette in a hat. So all folk. It was the first time I talked to people on the streets. Well, a new image, and especially in the international arena. The Russian men pulled themselves up, sobered up, and got busy. The highest birth rate was recorded in the Rusfer during the time of Gorbachev's prohibition. Russians grew in both numbers and quality. Let them think it's just dancing, but something went wrong and everything collapsed. Yeltsin no longer cared about the image of the Russian man. Swearing, a drunken dancing, mass poisoning of men with alcohol of the cheapest varieties such as Royal. Racketeering is flourishing, the war of gangs is flourishing, cars are exploding on the streets of Russian cities, men are dying in gang fights. In Lyubertsy, as in the whole of Mother Russia, improvised spontaneous monuments appear in the courtyards of houses. Vanya, let's say, nicknamed Varin, died at this place on such and such a date and year. Men began to drive powerful cars. To fight with might and main. Foreign cars. The traffic police consistently ripped off drivers. For a bribe of $100, you could drive fermented. 2 Chechen companies have been a hurricane in the number and mental health of Russian men. Army of darkness, but most of all, the current government has succeeded in this regard. For the benefit of a group of oligarchs, everything should exist. To go on the attack under a shower of machine gun bullets weaving among mines. With a machine gun at the ready shouting for Putin. For the oligarchs, the current Russian government has chosen a sophisticated, not so direct way of getting rid of Russian men. Russian men can be replaced by non-Russian men on the sly. And that's it. The thimbles are resting. A large business is satisfied, a migrant is cheaper. A Russian peasant could have organized a Bolotnaya a dozen years ago, but now he doesn't even pull it. And migrants will cherish the Kremlin's hand, which feeds them with work and caresses with all their might. And vote the right way. 1 in 5 adults in Russia is already a migrant. They directly tell Russian women, your husbands will die in the war, and we will live here and marry you and your daughters. And if you disagree, that's how we can force you. 53 of Russian men do not live to 63 years old according to the latest data. Hello to Putin's promise never to raise the retirement age with him. Now another massive article of the male population's decline is its own. Plus 2 million left the country in these 1.5 years, and this is 90% of the time Russian young men. Shaman on the sly, the shaman singer sings the song I Am Russian. I'm going to the end. I like the chorus in it, but I don't know what he meant. But the fact that the Russian man is being pushed by his own power to the last line, to the end, is becoming clearer and clearer to me. The liquor store is like a store on the couch. Grocery stores and clothing stores are closing around us. Some alcohol markets are flourishing and pharmacies are flourishing. Everywhere there is draft beer of dubious foam and cider, from which people sometimes die. If they don't make it to the pharmacy in time, go and drink. That's what the Russian government indirectly calls for Russian men. When migrants stay, they won't need it. Teeth only oligarchs get rich. They own almost 70% of the national wealth of the Russian Federation. And the salaries of ordinary Russian men at current prices are mocking. Look, almost every middle-aged and older man smiles with his mouth without several teeth. There are simply no funds for expensive implantation. And compare with men in Europe at 50 and in the USA. More soldiers today. In addition, the Russian State Duma adopted a law on raising the age limit for soldiers, sailors, surgeons, petty officers, ensigns, and midshipmen for 5 years. More soldiers are needed. Scalp migrants are scalping Russian men, as they did in the electric power plant near Moscow. Russian men are being taken under mortar fire and the heavy tread of leopards. For some reason, you can't pronounce it, demilitarization and banification, in my opinion. They are being pushed abroad by mobilizations, military actions, agendas, and working conditions. They are mowed down like grass by their own power. Why do we need Russian men in Russia if there is Putin and an army of migrants? If you are an ordinary Russian man, not an oligarch, not ready to get under bullets, not a special customer of alcohol markets, and even vote with your feet, speak out. You are an enemy of the State Duma. Putin's enemy. The enemy of the army of darkness.